Hello and welcome to the Rangers Rabble. As you can see, Martin's not available because he's apparently unwell. I don't actually want to get into details as to why he's unwell because that'll carry on throughout the pod. As you can see, joined by two great lads. How's it going?
No bad at all.
All right, well, aye. Ready to go, mate.
Good stuff. Right, we'll touch on the obvious thing that's obviously broken the last hour or two. The Stig Inge Bjorn being used that he's going to come in to join Rangers for potentially 6 months or longer. His role is going to be a football consultant and advisor. I'm not really too sure what that fully means. I'm sure it means something better than what it sounds like, but he's worked previously at Rosenborg as a sporting director and at Aarhus. That might not be how you actually say that clearly, but both of those roles, he was there for 4 years each. So he obviously has a good knowledge of what the role is and obviously what is maybe required at those clubs. So, guys, what do you think about the whole football consultant and advisory role? Like, what do you think that actually means? Because we've already got Dan Purdy, who's obviously there in a kind of technical role. So what do you think Stig Inge Bjornby's role is actually going to be at Rangers?
I think he's going to be filling in for the sporting director role, I would think, short term because of January coming up. As you're aware, Wally, he's got experience of being responsible for signing the players for Rosenborg and Aarhus in previous years. Rosenborg done the double when he was sporting director with signings that he brought in. And I think that'll be his brief, and to help Danny Rowe as much as he can when Danny Rowe obviously says, look, this is who I fancy, this is what I'm looking at. And he'll be linking with the chairman, I presume, based on what kind of budget's available. You know, because that we don't know, do we? Is Kavanagh going to give us 20 million, 10 million, 15? What is he going to give us? We don't know. But, I mean, he's got experience, as you say, and he's done a good job at the previous two clubs, Aarhus and Rosenborg, you know, as a sporting director completely. So has he got a chance now to come in, as you say, the job's probably a bit better than it sounds. Has he got a chance to cement his claim for that position? That'll be an interesting point to watch going forward, and how he works with Danny Rule in the short 6 months that he's technically going to be here in that capacity. You know, but the guy's got a wealth of experience going way back. You know, he's been Norway assistant manager. He's managed in his own right. And as we were saying before we came on, Souness was on about him at Rangers when he was at Rangers, Souness. And then he took him to Liverpool as a player after scoring in the Norwegian Cup final. So he's got a fair deep CV in football. You know, his career ended a wee bit sort of short, you know, when he was young. So he got into the admin side of it and the backroom side of it fairly quickly. You know, I think he started as a scout at Blackburn, if my memory's right. As I was saying, I can remember 3 years ago, but I can't remember what I had my dinner yesterday. But I'm sure he was a scout at Blackburn after he played there for a while. And that's where it started. But yeah, I think he's got the experience that we'll need at the moment. I think that's the way to term it at the moment.
Alan, what about yourself? What do you make of the whole football consultant and advisory role?
Seems a bit, I don't know, it strikes to me a bit strange. I don't really know if it's a good or a bad thing, to be honest with you, Willie, because for me personally, he's not a name I've really heard for about the last 20 odd years. I mean, I'm not really following all the football things that he's been doing since he's retired, as you've been saying. But I don't really know. See, at the end of the day, probably part of me just really thinks maybe it's better somebody coming in who's got a bit of European experience. I've said before on the pod, it's better than somebody coming in with English experience, lower league things, because that seems to be what we've had all the last couple of years, isn't it? It's always been ties to down south, and me personally, I know a lot of other people were bored to death with these signings down south now. So maybe we're going to cast the net a wee bit further now with having somebody like him in charge. Maybe as a short-term thing with a view to landing the job further in the future. Maybe depending on how it does in January, we'll see how he goes. But I suppose it's better than having nobody. But hopefully he's the man to bring in some decent signings for January, because let's face it, lads, we desperately need them, eh?
Yeah, I think the one thing that stands out with him is he's obviously got a lot of experience, which you probably can't really say that for Robbie Felwell and for Dan Purdy, who are still reasonably young and maybe don't have that experience that Stig Ingerbjorn maybe has. Maybe it's just somebody that they know through maybe like sort of Greta Steinson, who obviously does that kind of job for Leeds. He obviously kind of oversees a lot of that work. You wonder if this is somebody that he knows and thinks is going to be a good fit until they can maybe bring in, the next kind of full-time role. But look, interesting that he's obviously did the sporting director's roles twice, but I guess we'll only find out really what his role is. Maybe he'll do an interview on Rangers TV at some point, where maybe there's going to be an explanation as to what his remit is and what he's actually going to do over these next 6 months. Is he going to be allowed to make decisions for the summer, or is it just going to be that he's going to be a kind of go-between between Andrew Kavanagh and Parry, or is he actually just going to be mainly based at the training ground where a lot of the work's been done? But I guess we'll find that out over the next few weeks and months ahead. We'll jump on to the next subject, which is probably one that most people will have seen by now, just looking at social media. And it seems like he'll be the first person to depart in the January window. I don't think he'll be the last, just the way things have been going. But Joe Rothwell, Andy, what's your thought on him? Has it been a disappointment because of the type of player that we thought we were getting, and that it's kind of went this badly that he's having to leave after 5 or 6 months?
Yeah, I've said before, he came up with a pedigree of sorts for the Championship, didn't he? And he looked a unit. I'll give him that much. He did look a unit, and I expected things from him. Sadly, for me, it hasn't materialised. I've said it before. He's not even really huffed and puffed. And I got the impression, a wee bit like Aribo, he got to the stage where he didn't really want to be in Scotland playing. He couldn't get on with the Scottish game. And the club have now decided he can go. Let's hope we get a decent value for him and we don't just let him down the road for nothing. That's the thing. We've got to try and get something back in, so that we can reinvest in what we want to bring in, especially now with the appointment of Stig. And that'll all start rolling now for January. But he's been a disappointment for me, Wally, to be honest, yeah. I have to say. Big disappointment.
Alan, what's your thoughts on...
See, the thing is, Willie, I need to disagree with Andy a wee bit, right? Because you said he's no huffed and puffed. That's all he's done. He's just puffed because he's been blowing at his backside after about 20 minutes. you know what I mean? He's just totally not looked up to. He's totally looked way off the pace. He's looked as if he's just not been able to handle Scottish football. As you said, he's brought up with a big pedigree and he's not done anything. It's just another one of these signings, lads. We've seen it all before. They've charged up for England. They've been playing at lower Championship football. Thought, I'm going to breeze up to Scotland and just take this place by storm, and they've just not done it. So yeah, cheerio. I don't know how much we would get for him. I'm sure we paid at least a couple 100,000 for him. Yeah. So I don't know. Have you heard anything? Really, are we getting money for him? Are we just going to release him straight away or what?
Well, it does look as though basically what Rangers paid for him in the summer would look like that's what we're probably going to get back for him. I think the reported fee in the summer was around about $500,000. But I believe like the bigger side of it's obviously maybe clearing some of the wages, Alan, isn't it? Yeah, I don't imagine Rothwell was on a small wage, given he was at Bournemouth in the Premier League. So you would imagine that might free up some money. I know obviously one of the guys in the comments here that obviously was put up that obviously Rangers have been linked with the Tromso midfielder. And see, yet again, see when we are linked with these guys, I've obviously got names that I can hardly ever pronounce, but I'm going to try my best here for you, right? Jens Hierto Dahl. So he plays for Tromso. He's only 20 years old. I think he was somebody that was linked with being the kind of number 6 at the middle of the pitch. But I think he's also been linked with several clubs in England and in Europe. People could put 2 and 2 together and say, well, why is Stig Ingerbjorn coming in? Is this to try and get this deal over the line? I mean, that could be putting 2 and 2 together and getting 20, isn't it? So we might just be kind of putting those together and it's not true. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we do look at the Scandinavian market, because it's clearly one that has done actually reasonably well for Rangers over the years. So we'll certainly see if that comes to fruition. I do think we will see 1 or 2 deals happen quite quickly in this January window, because I think the manager will want players in as soon as physically possible, because clearly the sooner he can get his type of players in, maybe we can see better performances. Because at the moment, let's be honest about it, it's more about the results than it is about the performances at the moment. We're not exactly playing like prime Brazil in any games, so it's more about trying to battle through games and get a goal and then hope that we can see the game through. So I think we could definitely do with some new players in January, but clearly the summer was a massive overhaul and now we're kind of getting into that same vicious circle again. Okay, we'll touch on the next subjects. We're going to kind of try and get through some of the players because obviously there's going to be a lot of chat over the Hearts game for the next few days, and then you've obviously got Motherwell and St Mirren. So we'll kind of touch on potentially some players that might be leaving to free up some wages. Kieran Dill, Alan, I think it's fair to say it's not really worked out for Kieran at Rangers. He's been linked yet again with a few clubs in League One and the Championship. He's coming up to the last 6 or 7 months of his contract. Do you think Rangers will just allow him to walk away for free just to save the wages?
I would hope so. I mean, what was it down south? Was it Birmingham? Him and Davies were at Birmingham or something with the last season?
Yeah, he was at Birmingham in League One. He's been linked with another League One club and he's been linked with Hull City in the English Championship.
Because the thing I was concerned about, you thought maybe when he came back at the start of the summer, you thought maybe at least Birmingham would maybe put a bid in for him or try and take him or something, but yeah, again, no takers. Another one, Willie. I won't be glad to see the door hit him on the way out. I just don't think he's performed at all in the years that he's been here. And then obviously he was the whipping boy at the start of the season. For whatever reason, Russell Martin seemed to think he was prime Messi or whatever and playing him all the time, and he just never done anything either. So end of the day, you can't get complacent and sentimental about these things. See, he might be a good guy behind the scenes or whatever, but when he steps on the pitch and he doesn't perform, that's all we can really judge these players on, and he's not done it. He's not done anything of note in a Rangers jersey for me. So, I'll be glad to see him gone.
Yeah, I mean, I say Paul's obviously put in the chat, still not out of contract in summer. Yeah, mate, he absolutely is. That's what we were saying. The next, whatever that is, 6.5 months before his contract ends, does it make sense to let him go for free? Because the reality is there's probably not a fee really that you're going to get for him at this stage. So you would imagine maybe just Rangers clearing the wages would make the most sense. Andy, I'll come to you on the Kieran Dill one. One of those guys that was obviously brought in on a reasonably good deal by all accounts. You know, a guy that did okay. Another English Championship player that we brought in. He spent quite a number of times injured. He's obviously went out on loan to Birmingham where he did reasonably well in League One, which you would expect him to do, if I'm totally honest. But another one that's probably failed to deliver up here. What's your thoughts on these? And yet again, I suppose we can't put them all into the same kind of bag, right? But what's your thoughts on a lot of these English Championship players coming to Scotland? Is it a thing that we now need to stop looking at and that we look at other markets? Or do you think there is still players there that can come in and do a job for us?
We've got to look at other markets, and we've now got the ideal opportunity to look at the Scandinavian market, haven't we, as we just said? Because in times gone by recently, we've done well there. Times gone by with my age, I can remember the Johanssons and the Sorensens and the Persons all coming from there and doing well, you know. But the Championship players that were brought up, I would disagree with you a wee bit, Wally. I think the majority, if not near all of them, have come up thinking the Scottish game was going to be a breeze for them. They were just going to stroll it because they're Championship players. Well, I'm sorry, it may not be as technical as a Championship, but it's a totally different game up here.
Yeah,
it's 100 miles an hour. You've got 6 people in front of you before you get to the box, 8 people in front of you before you get to the box. There's none of this walking football, you know. And they're just, a lot of them have come up thinking they were going to just cruise through it, pick up a good wage, pick up trophies, and then they found out, hold on a minute, this is a bit tougher than I thought, and I'm not sure I fit in. And, you know, and with the Rothwell thing, I think some of them have looked at it and thought, do I really want to be here? Do I want to be up in Glasgow? You know, it goes side by side, and I think some of them have struggled to cope with the goldfish bowl, as we call it. So I think we've got to look at other markets now. We've got to look at Scandinavia. We've got to look at Germany, where Rowe's from, maybe Austria, because he knows a bit about that as well. You know, but I think we've got to stop this Championship players are the ones that will help us do what we need to do. It's been tried and tried, and it hasn't worked, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I don't think you're wrong. And I think there's a fair few players that we could now put on a list to suggest that it hasn't worked. I mean, there's obviously one of the comments here for the Great Wall of Canada saying Scandinavian players tend to be hardened and adapt well to the Scottish English Championship. You can get a lot of time on the ball. And I think that's shown over the years. The Scandinavian players do tend to be quite physical. They tend to be quite combative. They don't tend to be scared of hard work. And it's funny, obviously, where I sit, obviously, in Ibrox with my season ticket, that I look at somebody like Connor Barron, right? He's probably not the most technically gifted footballer in the world. He's probably not the most physical footballer that we have. But you know what? He's got all the heart and the fight that you need in Scottish football. And you need players like that in your squad. I thought Connor Barron was immense on Monday night. I thought that was possibly one of his best performances for Rangers. I thought the way that he absolutely battered that midfield. He won every breakdown. The amount of times he got to the ball first. The amount of times he put his body in front of the ball. He actually made some really good attacking plays well, which isn't really what Connor's in the team for. But that's the type of player that we're always talking about, isn't it? It's trying to find that right core player. And it's true what Sean is saying there to a point. Yeah, we have had a Bastian and a Rebo, but you would have to say that in the overall scheme of things, it's probably not been good enough. For the money that we've spent in that market, we probably haven't seen enough of the other side of it. And that's, I think Rangers thought at the time, and yet this is just my opinion, I think Rangers thought if they could get some of these players that are low value and they had a good season or two in Scotland and Rangers had a degree of success during that period, they could then sell them for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 million and they would make huge profits. Unfortunately, other than Joe Aribo, who obviously went for a reasonably good fee, and Calvin Bassey, who went to Ajax and then moved on to Fulham, it's not really worked out. And you would have to say that the money we've spent and the wages that we've paid, it's probably not really been a great market for us in the bigger scheme of things. And I would like to see us start to look a little bit further afield if that's the case. Okay, another player we want to touch on is Rabbi Matondo. Yes, he is still at Rangers. Yes, he is still picking up a fairly substantial wage. Alan, Rabbi Matondo, talk to me about him. Who's going to take him? He's obviously in the last 6 months of his deal. What do we do with Rabbi Matondo?
Well, probably honest, Willie, maybe the best thing is I don't imagine actually maybe anybody taking him, because how many? He's had a good couple of loans, and where was in Germany? Schalke or something? I
think it was the second division he was in, for the second half of last season.
Over there, did he not score in his debut or something? And we were all hoping, he's going to come onto a game here and actually show he's a decent player. But see, the funny thing with Matondo, right? And I'll probably end up getting pelters for us. On his day, you can see that he does have something, but for whatever reason, 80% of the time, he just doesn't do it. You would think by having the jet boosters as a football player, you would have immediately a leg up. But nowadays, when you see a lot of these players, especially when they come to us and they've got pace, they can only run fast. They can't actually. He couldn't control the ball. It's like his feet were going too fast. He didn't know what he was doing. It's the same with Gassama half the time. He's got pace, but he's cut back. He's another player. I mean, that's actually really frustrating me, Gassama. But that's a conversation for another time. But as you said earlier on, he's on a hefty wage into Matondo, so and he will see at the end of the day, if he leaves, but he'll always still have that goal against Celtic in his locker if he ever wants to brag about he played for Rangers and scored the winner against Celtic type thing. Or it was a 3-3 draw, I think, wasn't it? He scored that great goal against Celtic. So I mean, if he's not done anything, at least he's got that a feather in his cap to say that he's done that. But he's just not good enough. He's another player you can't rely on. He's injury prone and all these things. You can't rely on his form. So he's another one. 3 in a row, you're saying? I'll be glad to see the 3 of these go. We could have a long list of these. We could at least get into double figures of players we'd be glad to see the back.
We could be here all night with them.
I know we could, couldn't we? This is an hour pod now.
I think that's one of the scary things, Andy, isn't it? When you look at, obviously we don't know what the actual full wages are of these three players, right? But I would imagine you're probably looking at between £60,000 and £70,000 a week between the 3 of them, if not maybe more than that potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, as a football club, right? I'm not like somebody that's going to come out and criticise players because they shouldn't walk away from that level of money. But you're talking about Rangers potentially playing between £3 and £4 million a year in wages with those 3 guys. What are these guys actually bringing to the table? And sort of that money could have been put to so much better use, Andy, couldn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's players that we've missed, that we've not picked up because of it, I would believe. There's players we've let go for stupid money, and you know who I'm talking about. We don't have to go down that road at the end of last season, that we could have given them a wage rise and they'd have done a job this season. So the money would have been better invested, spent, whatever you want to call it. Because these guys, I mean, I think Matundo's on close to 30 grand in here, if not a bit more. And I don't see what he's ever produced apart from the goal against Celtic. I don't see what he's produced for us at all. So do we cut our losses there, get what we can and punt him? But as you said, who's going to take him? That's the problem, because he's not done anything. He's not done anything.
Yeah, and I think it's scary when you actually think about. I know people don't talk about the wages enough because more and more people talk about the fees. We obviously paid a fee for Rabbi, but when you've got guys here for 3 or 4 years, and you're talking about £1 to £1.5 million in wages each year, and I'm sure these guys will get bonuses and there'll be all these additional bits in their contract. It's actually. I mean, if you add those 3 guys together and you look at wages, you look at transfer fees, signing on fees, you're probably looking at £10 million just in money going out the door when you look at wages and all the other stuff. Because, if we think that, that Rabi's on roughly 25, 30 grand a week, so you're looking at between £1 million and £1.5 million. I mean, Kieran Dill's going to be on at least, I would have thought, 750 grand a year. Yeah. And imagine Joe Rothwell's going to be on 30 grand a year. Yes, for 30 grand a week, sorry. So you're looking at those. I mean, there's 3.75 million in wages, maybe more than that potentially. And then if you add up the length of the contract that Dill's had and the length of the contract that Rabbi Matondo's had, it's a lot of money that's been spent on these guys who have really had very little return. And that, to me, is the scary thing. But we're going to move on to the next subject where we might actually get a returning someday, which is a shocker. Because that doesn't tend to happen often. Alan, Jedi Gassama has been linked with Villarreal in Spain. It was reported that Rangers paid round about £2 million, maybe just slightly more than that in the summer to get him from Sheffield Wednesday. What do you think is a fair price for Jedi Gassama given his age? He's obviously still got like 3.5 years left in his 4-year contract. He's obviously had some moments of quality, but probably not enough. What would you say is a good return for Rangers at this stage of his contract?
I think Sheffield Wednesday fans were saying we got him at a bit of a steal, didn't we? I'm sure they said that he was worth more than what we paid for him. Mm-hmm. I don't know. See if it was maybe the Gassama that we signed at the start of the season. He looked pretty decent. You could be talking about what, 5 million? But yeah. Oh, do you know what, Willis? It's a hard one because I couldn't really say how much because he's just in the door. I mean, suppose you got him. I mean, the way football works is they maybe give us an offer, and we say higher if we don't think it's acceptable, or if we think it's. I mean, as Krajic's saying 8 to 10, I think that's a bit too much for him. As I said earlier on, I did touch in the comments about him. He's really frustrating me now. He just doesn't. Right. He just doesn't seem to pass the ball to anybody. It's cutting in. He's really annoying me now. So he's not really going to be one I would actually going to be honest with you and say I'll be sad to see him go, because I won't. I don't think he's made that much of an impression on me. You might give guys like Finlay Cutlass or that someday maybe a wee bit more of a chance if Gassama's not there. But it's a hard one. You would maybe double your investment, wouldn't you? So maybe about 4 or 5 million. Just that I guess, but I don't know what you guys would think.
Andy, I'll come to you on the same subject, mate. Yeah. What's a fair fee for Jedi? And do you think, because he obviously has potential, Jedi, some of the things he's done even in the short term here have been, of a really high standard. Some of his finishes early on were outstanding. Is that the sort of player you would like to get a sell-on fee for him as well, even if you maybe accepted a little bit less now on the transfer fee?
I think so. I think you've got to be looking at probably between 4 and 6 million now.
Right.
I think if you're going to, be somewhere around there. But as Alan rightly says, the club are in a position where if they don't think the offer's sensible enough, they can rebook the offer. But then they've got to be careful. If Danny Rule wants money in alongside what he's going to be given, the club's got to at some stage sit down and say, well, do you know what? We've got to take the best offer we can get. And if that's it, that's it. But
Yeah.
we can't put ourselves. My concern now is in January we must do the right things, and we're only going to get a handful in. If we get more than a handful in, it'll be a bonus, because we're obviously trying to get through January is going to be important with the games we've got. So we need to get the money we can for all of these boys we've spoken about to the best ability the board can, which is obviously going to be Fraser Thornton's brief at the minute because he's covering the CEO role, so he'll be, I would have thought, him and now Stig's coming in, they'll be involved in that, I would have thought. But we can't be going down this route again of sitting here after 6 to 8 months of saying, right, we need to move this one on for 6 million or 4 million. It's, it's the same conversation now for the last 5 seasons. And it's, the time's come to put an end to it, get what we can get, bring in what we need and go forward and stop, like people like Matunda. Surely somebody at the club at some stage must have looked at that and thought, we've done a wrong in here. And they should have been doing more to get him out of the club, if that makes sense. Maybe giving him games somewhere, getting him a decent loan. But he broke down a couple of times, didn't he? Am I right in saying that? He broke down injuries a couple of times on loan? Yeah. Am I thinking of Cortez? I can't remember. But, it's getting to the stage where if we don't do the sensible thing when we sign a player, like now we've got the potential to go to other markets, look for the bargains, but be sensible. If a player's $1 million and there's a player better than him at 2.5 million we can get, then that 2.5 million, if you can get him, then that's telling you, if he's got the ability, you're going to get 5 or 7 for him rather than 3 or 5 for the other fella.
Yeah.
It's about good business sense. And it's a two-edged coin now, or two-edged sword, where we need decent players in and decent management behind the scenes to get the players out for the right money. And, we're at that. As we said a minute ago, we could sit here and probably talk about another 8 players, couldn't we, quite easily, that we could get money for. But it's whether we'll get the money we're expecting, Wally. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think that's the point. And yet again, it's just like obviously opinions on guys. And there's some people saying, obviously we don't want to sell Gassama. And we're not saying we should sell him, but we're just saying if there's money in the marketplace and we can utilise that money to bring in other players while moving some on who are coming to the end of their contract, Rangers might have to look at that because there's only so much money you can spend within FFP.
I mean, sorry to interrupt
money back in.
If Matunda gets moved on and Gassama gets moved on, look at that money that's freed up out of them 2 players alone.
Yeah.
That's a substantial sum of anywhere between 8 to 10 million quid potentially freed up.
Well, that's it, because also you've got the length of their contract there. You've obviously got, the sort of fees that will be paid, how much it's up front, additional fees. So, there's a lot more to every one of these, deals that's done. It's not all money paid up front. Very rarely does that seem to happen. So it's interesting. I do think this January window will be a busier one than normal for us, just because I think it's clear that the manager does need some players to come in and to make this squad a little bit stronger, because clearly at the moment we seem to be getting the best out of what we've got available, but that probably isn't a very high threshold in all honesty. And it's scary to think, and I think maybe that's why Cavan has maybe been as angry as he has been, that the sheer amount of money that we spent in the summer, there should have been a much higher standard of player coming in the door. And the level of criticism that's been handed out on the standard of player is probably why he's angry, because he's probably sat there and thought, we've handed over money to Fairwell in particular. And I look at that squad and think, we're not better. In fact, most of the guys that are still the best players in the team now were the best players that were in the team last year. And that says a lot about the players that we've signed this year. And the fact that Dujon Sterling come back Monday night and played so well, having been out for 7 months, it's not a good look, really, in all honesty. I just want to touch on one of the last bits. The league is still winnable. We have to spend in January for a few centre-backs at least. Andrew, what's your thought on this quickly, because we're going to finish up in the next few minutes? Obviously, Giga's away at the AFCON. Manny Fernandez is still reasonably young. Clinton Encialis, obviously still limited amount of minutes he's played for Rangers. Dujon's back after 7 months out. Cornelius is injured. Suter's injured. How do we fix that?
I think we've got to bring an experienced centre-back in, at least a decent one, alongside Fernandez. But I do also think we need a good striker up top to partner Majowski. We really do. Because if we don't do that, we can have all the best centre-backs in the world. We're still not going to put the ball in the net often enough. That'll be the end result if we don't do both ends of it. We've got Cameron, we've got Barton. If Raskin would just pull his thumb out of the cold tap, you know what I mean, and get going again, we've got them. Young Curtis, he's young. He's gonna have to get time to play, to allow him to educate and learn in games, because he's not going to learn constantly being left on a training field or on a bench.
Yep.
So, we've got to give him a bit of a run as well, and the others. But yeah, we do need an experienced centre-back, 100%. And I say it because a coach like Kenny, I always say with any team at any level, a good keeper, 2 good centre-backs, and the goalie used to say this, Andy Gorham, that's your unit. Your right back and your left back can do kind of what they want with a bit of instruction, but that's your unit. And that's what drives the midfield to stay off them, and then they can feed the forwards. Problem we've not got a forward other than Majowski to feed at the moment. Yeah.
Right, Alan, I'll come to you. What's your suggestion on, I suppose, basically trying to stabilise the team and trying to get us moving forward, really?
Same as Andy, Willie. I think that defence needs major heart surgery. Giga, sometimes he's been okay, sometimes been an absolute bomb scare. It's the same thing with Fernandes. You can't count on these guys. At least if one of them plays well, the other one's honking and vice versa. For me personally, we can't guarantee a steady centre half for the two of them.
Right.
I know people don't rate John Cena, I was going to say. John Cena.
That'd be a centre half and a half, wouldn't it?
Nobody'd see him. I think maybe if Suter comes back, maybe we'll put. I'm harking for a guy like, I know we'll get pelters for this, just a guy like Katic. I just want a defender who just blitters the ball away. Yeah. I don't care about a defender waltzing out and comes in the box, he headers it, he'll just get rid of the ball. Danger, gone. I'm looking for somebody like that. Maybe somebody a bit more creative in midfield. And I would even say we need 2 strikers, to be perfectly honest. Chermiti, I said to my pal last night, Chermiti, mark my words on this podcast, 17th of December, Chermiti is going to go down as the most expensive flop in Scottish football history. Right? I'm going to stick to those guns. I just don't see the guy getting. I just don't see anything to rely on him as a striker for Rangers. You can't rely on Danilo. Majowski's coming into a good game. So if you can't rely on Chermiti and you can't rely on Danilo, we need somebody else we need another backup at least for Majowski. That's if he's going to fire on all cylinders. But I still can't get my head around the Chermiti deal. Honestly, I can't see that. See, when you see him hitting shots, it's straight at the goalkeepers and there's no composure. You would think by spending £8.5 million on a striker, he would be composed to hit at least. I mean, see if you hit a shot anywhere at the goalkeeper's left or right, it's pretty much guaranteed to be a goal. But
you know what, Alan? I've said that Chermiti deal stunk for me. Something stinks about it for me.
It's
can't prove anything. I've got no facts and figures, but something stinks. And Wally, at the back, you'll remember this. At the back, we need a Ron McKinnon and a Tam Forsyth. That'll do us.
Yeah, look, I think the obvious thing is we need somebody that's a real leader back there in that back line, somebody that's going to drag the team through. Actually, you know what?
Experience.
I thought the guy behind me was going to take a heart attack when, when Manny Fernandes tried to do that turn in the middle of the pitch and the hips, and then he did a wee spin and he went, and the guy behind me, and he did not look well when he did that. But see, the thing about Fernandes, you can see wee things about Fernandes that I think he actually could be a good centre back. But I think he maybe needs that bit of experience next to him at times to say, look, Manny, this isn't the time to be doing twists and turns in the edge of the 18-yard box, mate. This is the time to bullet the ball 70 yards up the pitch. And I think that's where...
He does like a diagonal.
And I think it's just... I think, unfortunately, what we lack at the moment is a bit of experience. I mean, like Giga, for all he's had a reasonable amount of football, he still doesn't have huge experience. If you look at Manny Fernandes, again, not a lot of experience. Clinton Enciala, he's only played first-team football at Rangers. The fact that Suter and Cornelius aren't there to at least help these younger players isn't great. That's why I think we will try and sign a centre-half. But We'll obviously touch on more of these things when the January window hits, and obviously if there is movement ahead of the Celtic game, and then obviously I think it's Annan after that, isn't it? Is it Annan? No, in fact, sorry, we play Aberdeen, home and away. So
we got the sheep back to back, haven't we?
Yeah, look, it's tough. It's a tough 3 games to get straight out of here. That's why I think the manager will want the business done as soon as possible. Right, we'll touch on this question quickly. Could Craig Halpert do a job? Yeah, I think he could. And he's obviously somebody that would help the rota here, the homegrown rota. You've obviously got like sort of Lewis. Yeah, I mean, like Lewis Mayo's another one that's been linked because, yet again, he's got that, kind of knowledge of Scottish football. He can cover at full back and centre back. Ross McCrory, who I think's out of contract in the summer, has been one that's been linked to coming back. And I think these type of moves will occur because I think it's clear now that Rangers, when they're doing the European squad, are struggling to fill the basic 25-man squad. So if we can bring back a Ross McCrory who's gone through the academy, or a Craig Halkett, or obviously, Lewis Mayos, etc., I do think we might see one or two of those deals this summer. Probably something we missed out on last year on one or two players. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we do. But it's not necessarily about, adding certain players. It's about adding the right types of players with the right character and the right mentality. And I think you have to say that when it comes to the Scottish lads, more and more of them know what it takes to win in Scotland, and they know what it takes to pull on a Rangers jersey.
Those last words you used there, Wally, character and mentality.
Yeah, of course, mate.
That's what we need. That's what we now
need. And it's something that you can always fall back on. See, even when you're not playing well, see if you've got that strength and mentality, you'll get through most things. And I think that's something at times in football now you don't see enough of, unfortunately. I think a lot of football's become quite weak that way, that we don't see enough characters and strength in players. But we could obviously go on for another hour here, but we're not going to because my homemade soup's getting put out right now and then I'm having my dinner after that. So just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate everybody's comments. Thanks again. Martin wants me to tell you to subscribe. He wants another $1.99 off every single person that's not done it so far. He's trying to buy Christmas presents for me and he's not got enough money yet, so get subscribed to the Rabble.
Anything, Wally?
Well, I'm probably not, to be honest, at this stage. I think I've kind of gave up on him. Big thanks to Andy and Alan for obviously coming on the pod. Really appreciate you guys giving up your 5 to half 5 to come and chat on here. And Martin will hopefully be back to better ways this evening or tomorrow, depending on how he's feeling. So thanks again, guys, and take care of yourselves.